So before I start off, I want to mention that there's going to be some audio bumps throughout the video, and I usually don't like starting my videos off like this, but it shouldn't be a problem for any future videos, so yeah, I hope you guys can bear with it for now.
You're not an intellectual, you're a fake and a fraud.
Hey, what's up guys, this is Tristan, and about a year ago I made a video called In Defense of Black Clover, where I gave my thoughts on Black Clover volumes 1 through 12, mostly positive, some negatives here and there, but overall it was a pretty positive video, and by the title you can pretty much assume that. But fairly recently I reread volumes 9 through 12 and read volumes 13 through 17 for the first time, and my opinions on Black Clover have kind of shifted a bit. I still think that Black Clover is a pretty enjoyable series, but I do have some more complaints and gripes about the series, and I don't really like the series as much as I used to, but I still think it's a serviceable series, and I wanted to dive into more of my current thoughts about Black Clover. I also want to mention that I'm not currently caught up to Black Clover. I know the video is called The Current State of Black Clover, but I mainly just titled that because I was originally going to title it In Defense of Black Clover 1 year later, but I thought that this title was a little bit more appealing, so yeah, a little bit of a clickbait title thing there, but it'll do for now.
Hey guys, I was just catching up on Black Clover. Well, more like rereading it. As you all know, it is my favorite manga of all time, and I'm really excited to see T-Dog's take on it. I'm sure it's going to be overwhelmingly positive, because if it's not, us Black Clover stands may have a few problems, you know, hashtag Black Bulls for life.
When I was younger, I wondered why plagiarism was bad. When I grew up, I read Black Clover. Aster, the main protagonist. Juno, best friend of main protagonist. Wizard King, Hokage. Asta, Naruto.
Yeah, I actually used to be a big fan of Black Clover just because I thought the concept was really interesting, and I thought that it was really entertaining, and it was just one of those series I could sit down and read and not really have a hard time figuring out. But then I actually started to think about it, and I actually saw so many things wrong with this series that it just kind of became an annoying mess, and so I just gave up on reading it entirely, and now it's just a laughingstock, and I kind of am like, well, I sold it, got my money's worth out of it, and I was entertained for a little bit, so yeah.
Black Clover is kind of a divisive manga in the community. Some people think it's the greatest manga ever made, you know, the gold standard of shonen manga, and it's not. And other people think it's the worst manga ever made, it's a stain to the manga industry, and yeah, it's not either. I think that, if anything, I consider this manga a fast food manga. And essentially what I mean by that is, like fast food, the series isn't always the greatest in terms of quality, but it's pretty enjoyable. Now, to state the obvious here, manga is obviously a form of entertainment, so the main goal of any manga series, or really any form of entertainment, is to be entertaining, which Black Clover succeeds in, but the main flaw with this is that the longevity of entertainment really doesn't go very far if the story itself is weak, because you can only be entertained so much by something if you're not very invested in the actual story. One of the biggest problems to me with Black Clover is the amount of characters introduced in the series. And this isn't something that's solely exclusive to Black Clover. This is something that happens in a lot of other manga like My Hero Academia, One Punch Man, Yu Yu Hakusho, and so on and so forth. But I think the main reason why this problem sticks out, especially in Black Clover, is because a lot of the characters try to play too big of a role in the story, so a lot of characters end up having their stories stretched pretty thin. And I feel like this problem with other mangas isn't really as big of a deal, because in a series like One Punch Man, at first it's kind of overwhelming, all these characters being introduced at once, but as the series goes on, it's pretty apparent who is important and who is kind of just there for laughs and being a side character. And I feel like in Black Clover, it's too much being juggled at once, not all the time, but definitely sometimes it feels like that. In Black Clover Volume 10, something really bold happens. And I feel like bold decisions in manga, they can either be really good or kind of fall flat. And in the case of Black Clover Volume 10, this decision falls really flat in my opinion. Basically what happens is 3 characters from a Black Clover light novel are brought into the manga, and the Black Clover light novel content isn't even adapted. They're kind of just tossed in there. It's pretending like they knew Austin and the gang all along. Some quick flashbacks are thrown in there, and it makes it feel like they're crucial characters, when in reality, we kind of are just introduced to these characters, and I didn't really care about them that much because they weren't around in the earlier content. One of the characters that's introduced has a pretty significant relationship between the main villain of that arc, and it's very reminiscent of the Pain arc in Naruto with Jiraiya and his students, and that's basically how significant this relationship between the characters is supposed to be, but they were just introduced in that arc, so it didn't really come across as good as it was supposed to. I think that this arc was pretty good overall. I think that all the stuff with Asta and the demon form kind of being fleshed out was a pretty interesting concept. I think that the stuff with Mars and the Diamond Kingdom was pretty well done, pretty well executed. But these 3 characters that were introduced from a light novel, I don't really know about that. I feel like if they were fleshed out in a different arc and then it kind of led into this one, I would have liked it, but it feels like too much kind of being sprung up at once. Now around volume 13, a tournament arc is introduced, and this is probably my least favorite arc in the entire series. Now in terms of tournament arcs in general, I'm kind of a big fan of them if I like the characters a lot. For instance, Dragon Ball, Hunter x Hunter, Yu Yu Hakusho, My Hero Academia, oof. Those are some great tournament arcs. Pretty much every tournament arc in those series smacks. But in Black Clover, I don't really know. It just didn't really hit the same way as it did for a lot of other series, and I think that it's because the magic system in Black Clover is so loose and just however the user of the magic wants it to be, that it didn't really feel that grounded. And the whole 3-person system in the Black Clover tournament arc didn't really feel as great as it could have been. I feel like one-on-one battles would have been better suited for this arc, whereas another series, My Hero Academia, when they do the 3-on-3 battle type of thing in the tournament arc, it feels pretty well done because they're all utilizing each other's powers, where in this arc, they're kind of all just throwing stuff out there and hoping that it'll work. I feel like one of my biggest complaints about this arc was that most of the fights didn't feel that strategic, and I don't think that every manga fight has to be incredibly strategic. Not every fight has to be, a Fullmetal Alchemist, a Hunter x Hunter, you name it. I feel like just battles like Dragon Ball, where they basically throw everything they got until the other person falls down, fights like that are perfectly acceptable, but Black Clover almost tries to tackle too much at once, and it just doesn't really hit for me. I also find it kind of strange how, in order for them to determine who the Royal Knights are going to be, they have to set up a 3-on-3 tournament. Because the Wizard King told Austin Yuno that the most important thing is merit, and that means that you have to be particularly good or worthy of something, and I feel like that encases more than just being good at fighting, especially on a 3-on-3 tournament. And that should also encase, being good at teamwork, which none of them really rely that much on teamwork. There's a little bit of teamwork here and there, but it's mainly just throwing stuff out there and hoping that it'll work. But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of this arc. If you're a huge fan of the Black Clover Royal Knights tournament arc, then good for you, but to me, it just didn't hit as much as it probably did for a lot of other people. Something that I really want to mention about Black Clover that I never mentioned in my previous video is that I'm not a big fan of the character Gauche. I may be mispronouncing that, but as right now, I'm just going to leave it at that. So first off, I want to say the whole concept of mirror powers and a mirror for an eye, and all the powers that come with that for Gauche, are probably some of the coolest abilities in Black Clover, if not the coolest. But I think the whole concept about Gauche being weirdly obsessed with his younger sister is just really uncomfortable, and it kind of ruins the character for me. I think the character has a lot of potential. I think that if his character was mainly about him protecting his sister, which it kind of is, but not really executed as good as it could have been, because what comes across as kind of weird. If you've read Black Clover, you probably know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to dive in depth into that, but yeah, this character is just kind of weird, and I'm not really sure why that on-running joke has been lasting this long. So even though I wasn't a huge fan of the tournament arc in Black Clover, I do think that the arc that comes after that, which I think is officially called the reincarnation arc, that's by far, without a shadow of a doubt, my favorite arc in all of Black Clover. Now, when I first started reading this arc, I honestly just called it the Hideout Raid arc, because there's a similar arc in My Hero Academia called the Hideout Raid arc that's pretty similar to this arc. And, I don't think every series should be compared to another, but if I'm being frank about it, the My Hero Academia Hideout Raid arc is leaps and bounds better than the reincarnation arc. But I think that's fine. I think a lot of people have a tendency to just go online, take two completely unrelated manga series, and just compare them like it's no big deal. And I just can't even fathom who would do something like that. I just don't know who in their right mind would go on a platform, let's just say YouTube, and have a whole series of videos comparing two series that's unrelated. I don't know. I'm almost losing my appetite just thinking about it. I feel like the best thing about the reincarnation arc that differentiates this arc between all the other arcs in Black Clover is that it's very bold, in a good way. And I feel like in order for me to really dive into my thoughts about the reincarnation arc, I needed to talk about some spoilers. So if you really don't want to be spoiled on Black Clover, I'll put a timestamp on the screen that you can skip to if you don't want to be spoiled, but this is your warning, I'm going to jump into spoilers now. So first off, King Julius's, aka the Wizard King's death. And to me, this was the most impactful and by far the most emotional moment in all of Black Clover. And the main reason for this is because the Wizard King's death held weight to it. It would have been easy to just have him in the whole series, watching over everyone every time there was a threat that was too powerful for the average mage to deal with. They could just call in the Wizard King and he could deal with it because he's the most powerful person in all of the Clover Kingdom. And before this point, it pretty much felt like, oh, Lich is an insanely powerful being, more powerful than any wizard in the series other than the Wizard King can face, but as long as King Julius is there, it'll be fine. But once the Wizard King died, it really sort of took out that place of comfort and a crutch to fall back on, and it really forced the new generation of wizards, Asta, all of that gang, to step forward, be more powerful, and take on the Eye of the Midnight Sun. And I'm going to make a comparison to My Hero Academia, so if you haven't read My Hero Academia 1 through 11, skip forward a little bit. I'm going to be putting these spoilers in black and white, so you'll see it in the bottom part. But anyways, I'm gonna jump into this. The Wizard King's death in Black Clover basically had the same significance that All Might losing most of his powers in the Hideout Raid in My Hero Academia had. And it's a very significant moment in both series. In bringing these characters back, sort of reversing that big, impactful moment, kind of takes away from it, and it kind of takes away from the whole message it was supposed to send to the new generation of heroes. And I'm a huge My Hero Academia fan, but if All Might suddenly came back and had all of his powers restored, it would really take away a lot of the significance, because the whole point of him getting his powers taken away in the first place was to pass on the torch. That was basically the whole significance of that moment. Okay, so I'm done talking about My Hero Academia spoilers, so back to the Black Clover spoilers. I feel like the biggest slip-up in Black Clover, possibly in the whole series, might have been bringing back the Wizard King. And I'm not at that point yet in the series. I've only read volumes 1 through 17. I'll probably continue it at some point. It's not my main priority right now to continue Black Clover, but at some point I'll probably get to that and make another video on it. But as right now, I've seen a good amount of spoilers about what happens with King Julius coming back, and I feel like it really takes away from the whole point of him dying in the first place. His energy kind of dies, and that energy is supposed to be brought back with the new generation of wizards. And him coming back kind of takes away the significance and message that the new generation is supposed to take from his death. And my opinions on this may change once I actually get to that point in the series, because Volume 22 had a cover that pretty much looked like a biblical painting, and the whole thought of the Wizard King coming back is basically supposed to be like, Jesus Christ coming back, and the whole arc revolves around people being reincarnated, so yeah, it might have a good explanation there. As right now, I'm not a huge fan of that decision, but my opinions may change in the future. So at the moment, my verdict on Black Clover is I think it's a serviceable manga. I think it's enjoyable for the most part, even though the tournament arc wasn't really that enjoyable for me. And overall, I feel like a lot of my interest in Black Clover has definitely kind of went down a little bit, but I'll probably check out more of the series at some point. Again, it's not my top priority. I have a lot of other things that I'd rather read before then, but I'm interested to see where the reincarnation arc finishes and how other points of the series end up at, because I think that the world of Black Clover is very interesting. But yeah, that's basically where I stand on that issue right now. Overall, that'll do. If you enjoyed, smash that like button, subscribe, drop a comment letting me know your thoughts about Black Clover. If you're using spoilers, press spoilers and then a bunch of enters, so you press read more, you know the drill, and I will see you guys in the next video.